Welcome to this new podcast episode. Today I'm talking to Ana Rosa de Lima, and we'll call you Ana from now on to make it also easier for myself because I don't speak Portuguese. But you are originally from Brazil and you now live in Germany. And I got your name through a friend, a mutual friend, I should say, Leila Martins, who has spoke earlier also in the podcast. I will put the episode in the show notes that you can also listen to her. And what the occasion was, because I have a list on LinkedIn that showed female leaders that I think people should follow on LinkedIn because they have something to say. And I invited people to put other people up on the list, and she put you up as a potential person who people should follow on LinkedIn. So that's why this is happening today. So thank you.
Thank you. Lila is always bringing people together, and she's doing an amazing job. So thank you very much, Lila, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, I agree. That's that sounds a lot like Lila, and I met her at the IDG forum in Co in Switzerland last year. That's how I connected with her. So tell me a bit, because we're going to go all through your stories and what you do now, but I'm really interested in where you came from Brazil, because I'm not very aware of Brazil, but I did some research this morning and I go like, oh, really, this is a really huge country. It's very huge. But tell me a bit more about Brazil and where you come from.
Yeah, so I'm actually born in Fortaleza, like the northeast coast of Brazil. And I grew up in Pará. That's the state where the COP30 is going to happen this year. So that's in the Amazon area. And I should mention also that I come from a family, like my father's family is from also the Northeast, and my mom's family is from deeper in the Amazon side of the North. So the border with Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. And so I do have this kind of Northeast and North perspectives from Brazil. And so most of the bigger cities known in Brazil are São Paulo, Rio, Brasilia, maybe, I don't know, Porto Alegre. And so they are all southeast, or I mean, Brasilia is in the center, but because of the capital. But most of them are in the southeast part. So that's not where I come from. And so I come from the north and northeast, and so the north is most known by being the location of the Amazon region, of most of it. Of course, there are in other countries as well. There's also some in Maranhão. But yeah, but I would say I'm the middle. We call it the region Meio Norte in Brazil because it's kind of, and I find it interesting. So I have both sides family, Northeast, North, and I'm from the kind of middle, Maranhão, Pará, Piauí. That's where I grew up.
And now you mentioned COP. Do you think it's a good idea that the COP is in Brazil?
Definitely. I do think it's going to be easier for, like, we engage with many communities that are located in Pará, and I do think that's a very big potential to actually bring the communities to COP and to the conversation, and that's, yeah, I do think important to at least try to really engage the communities that are located. It will make it easier. Of course, it's not that straightforward in the end, because even if it's in the Amazon region, in one of the entrance states for the Amazon region, it is difficult to actually bring the communities to the vote, but it's makes already easier. And I do think Belém gives a good perspective of the Amazon, like it's a huge city, at the same time very close to nature, kind of. I do think kind of can give an idea of when you're entering the Amazon, you kind of, yeah, that's a kind of a good first touch with the Amazon, I would say.
To me, it sounds also well, of course, when you bring so many people together on a location, you get to do with a lot of flights going there, so maybe that's not the best idea. But in general, I think last year it was in Qatar, I believe, or was it? No, Qatar was 2 years ago. And I think bringing people to the Amazon and seeing where things are really going wrong, I think that's maybe the best from this.
I do think the biggest challenge of being in the Amazon is the prices going up incredibly for the people living there. So a friend of mine even couldn't renew his renting contract because the price just went up in preparation of COP. So this is, of course, the bad side, and of course the flights anywhere, but that would happen in any location.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I didn't know that. So that's a good insight. And the rent prices increase because of COP, and people who live there normally can't afford to rent the same place because the rents increase. That's an interesting problem. So I saw some of your videos where you show your communities in Brazil, what you do there, and we're going to talk a bit later about what you actually do there. But what I was looking at was you're looking at a community in Brazil, and you were also talking about where you come from. Was what was it again? The triangle?
Arc of Deforestation.
Yes, Arc of Deforestation. And you were in this community with seeds, and in the background you saw smoke above the Amazon. And to me that was really saying everything, right? You are doing your best to build a community and working at agroforestry, biodiversity, and in the background you see smoke above the Amazon. How do you feel that? How do you cope with that?
I mean, that's quite. It is quite difficult to live through this situation. I mean, there was the first agroforest workshop we've done in an indigenous community. So last year we did the second. That was also in the Arc of Deforestation. The first year that was in Maranhão with the Guajajara people. One of the leaders who were organizing the event, he couldn't attend because he was on the firefighters kind of community firefighters. So it was hard because we actually had postponed to be already in the start of the rainy season. So the workshop should be previously, like short before the rain starts to come, because we wanted not to have so much rain yet that we won't be able to do the activities, but we wanted to be close enough to the rain to prepare for when the rain starts. So the time was not randomly chosen. So, but the idea was that would be already raining enough that there would be not so much fires. Also making clear that these are not natural fires. All the fires in the Amazon region are man-made fires, are illegal fires, are actually crimes. And yeah, and then one of the leaders couldn't attend. So it was quite very, very hard for me because we kind of were doing everything because of having him as one of the main reasons. Having him as the organizer, he did a calendar showing the bees, and kind of there was the give, so kind of the little gift for the workshop was something that was done by him, and he couldn't attend. So it was a little bit difficult for me. At the same time, it's not that I'm not familiarized with this situation. Like I grew up in this region, and so we know how difficult the reality is. But yeah, it's never that. Even though we know it's never that easy. So I would say
So you grew up in Brazil and then you had a master's in Australia.
I did a semester exchange in Australia
Okay.
where I was doing a project. Actually, I'm a materials engineer, and I did my bachelor in Brazil, in the region I grew up. That's Carajás region, so the southeast of Pará, so an Amazon state. And I did work a lot with extractive metallurgy or metallurgy. So that's kind of my background of studies. And I went to Australia on that regard, like on that topic. So was a project on nickel cobalt, kind of in a way with contacts with the mining industry. What I think it's quite maybe unexpected to the to where I work nowadays, to the context I work nowadays. But basically, that was also my first contact with indigenous communities. That was also, or of course, not the first contact. I grew up in like my family is Omagua, and I grew up in Pará with many friends from different indigenous communities. Tembe was the closest friend I had that was with indigenous heritage. But yeah, I kind of did my studies on that regard. So, and for me, it was quite interesting because in the start of my studies, I did projects with even funding from the mining industry. And then a few years later, I started, okay, the first project I was visiting with the Chicken was seeing how a mining company in Brazil was actually leaving heavy metals in the communities. So the same mining. So I have some perspectives on that regard. Also having it in mind that mining industry and metallurgy is quite strong in this region of the Amazon. So the deforestation also has a lot of influence of even the building of the cities were started due to the mining cycles and so on. Yes, I would say.
So you choose this study because you thought there was a future in it for you, or you choose it because you really wanted to research what's going on?
Actually, so first of all, I wanted to study something related to engineering because I was good at math. Pretty much, I had no other goal. And the options I had, so I didn't, I couldn't afford not living with my parents, so to study. And the courses that they were available due to the course that were available due to the impact of the local industry were mining, metallurgy, geology. And on that regard, I was like, okay, I don't really want to work with mining. And actually, I wanted to work with materials, thinking that I could also work with research and others activities on that perspective. But so yeah, that's why I chose my study field. In the end, it was influenced due to what was possible in the location I was living in.
Right. And I think from my perspective, you made a very smart decision to choose like practical parts in other countries. So you went to Australia, you went to other countries as well to do like practical parts in your study. So you went abroad and also to Germany then. Because I think, and that was my experience too, when you have the opportunity when you're in university or in a higher school, you have not a lot of cost, you don't have a lot of responsibilities. So this is the most perfect time where you can discover and go out and visit other cultures and use your education as a tool and also like an income for that because you usually get some money, some funding somewhere for your education. I'm not sure if that was the same for you, but for me that was the case. I didn't have a lot, but I had enough to go to Denmark, for example. So I went to Denmark, for example, and
Yeah,
so
definitely. So I went to Australia with a scholarship, of a project scholarship, and I came just after to Germany. There was a big scholarship time in Brazil, so it was Science Without Borders. There were a lot of Brazilians coming abroad, so I was one of the first round in Europe. There was one group before, one semester before going to the US, but I was the first group coming to Europe.
and did you have the expectation then that you would go back after your time in Germany to Brazil, or what were you thinking?
I did go back to Brazil.
Okay.
So I came to Germany actually through 2012, 13. Then I went back to Brazil, finished my studies, and actually I was looking for a job pretty much. And I had a job opportunity here in Germany, so I took it. Also, let's be honest, like Brazil is in the start of an economic crisis that led to a political crisis that came after back then when I finished my studies 2015, 16. And so I couldn't find a job in Brazil, or I couldn't find a career opportunity in Brazil. So I kind of came to Germany because of that, because I've had an opportunity here. So it was pretty much, yeah, very practical decision.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's how life happens. Things come at your crossroad, and you take a decision, which in your case is like a ticket to like a better career than it was at that time in Brazil. And maybe in a couple of years you go back and you find there's other opportunities over there, and you settle there. How do you feel now, living in Germany for what is it, 8 years almost?
Yeah, a bit more than 8. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel?
So even when I came to Germany, it was with a project in partnership with Brazil. So every year I would go once or twice to Brazil. Also due to my work since I moved here. And of course, once I'm in Brazil, I would need to take holidays, and all my holidays were always taken to visit my parents in Brazil, and so I could not go to Brazil without going home. Um, and nowadays I work full time with Latin American communities. So even though I'm in Germany, I do work quite a lot I'm very connected with Brazil. What has, of course, many different implications in the sense of like I don't think I'm so like I know that I'm going to Brazil this year. I'm sure. Sorry for my carbon footprint, but I'm pretty sure at some point I will go to Brazil. Um, Also, to be honest, like a few years ago, um, I didn't want to go so often. Also for carbon footprint and so on. I wanted to. Also, I'm not an expert on agroforestry or on meliponiculture. I'm not. But and I tried. Okay, I don't want to actually. Even the workshop that happened with the Guajajara community. It was our first agroforest workshop with indigenous communities, our second or third that we developed in general. But there was a very big moment, and I almost didn't go because I was like, no, I want the communities to lead. I want like there are other people that are organized and so on. But I'm super happy I went because that's things related to connectivity and to build trust and build connection with communities that we need to be in person. We need to have um, a relationship that's close because we work basically we at Meli we have like every day someone writes in our groups and there are days that there are more conversation, there are days there are less, and we have weekly meetings since years So there's a lot of interaction. So there's a lot of people sharing stories. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of trust building online. So we already do our best to do not need to travel so much. So we do really our best. But there is the in-person part is also important. And I do think, of course, maybe at some point, it's not going to be myself, it's going to be another leader, but we have leaders in Brazil as well. And maybe they'll be able to take over and I will be able to travel less. But at this point, I do think it's still important for me to be there in presence. And actually this year, I'm very excited because we are bringing Arukapé Surui, Aikiwara, for the first time to Germany. So it's the first time we are bringing one indigenous leader to Europe. So that's for us one very big goal that's coming, that we are being able to do more of these travels to present them to strengthen their voice even more. So we are quite excited about it.
Okay, so you started working in an opportunity in Germany, but then because you started to work as a research assistant at the University of Duisburg, but then you decided to take a different route. So you go back to your roots, and you start your own organization.
Yeah, actually, in 2000, so I came to Germany in 2016. In 2017, I realized I was really missing my language because I was really not talking much Portuguese. And I started a podcast. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, mostly like a mix of Brazilian and like international podcasts. And then I started a podcast in 2017. And at the same time, I was at the university as a research assistant, as you mentioned. And I was doing that as my side work. And then 2019, we did a crowdfunding because 2019, a friend of mine, Kayapó friend of mine, came to Europe because he was attending to the Lush Spring Prize back then. And then I organized a couple of talks of him in Cologne, in Duisburg, as I say, where I used to live. I think there's a lot. Well, I organized a couple of activities for him around Germany in the region I used to live as well. And that worked well. And he slept at my place back then. And I asked him, hey, Bepunu, what do you think about us working with doing a project on stingless bees? In the middle of our conversation, we were talking about multiple things. And I was like, hey, and I was really like, I was doing the podcast for over 2 years. And I wanted to do something more, hands-on. And my father used to work with bees at the Indian University, the State University of Piauí, and when I was a kid, actually. So I was very familiar with, I wouldn't say very, I was familiar with stingless bees, so the native bees to Brazil, and very innocent, like very naive, I would say. I would expect the Kayapó to mostly have contacts with the stingless bees. But of course, that's not only the case. I mean, they work with both bees. But yeah, so I proposed this idea to Kayapó, to Bepunu Kayapó, and he liked, and then he went back to Brazil. I think a month later, from nothing, like we didn't continue. Like I just presented the idea to him, because of the conversation we were having on bees and plants and stuff, that he did some drawings, beautiful drawings at my house as well. And he sent me a picture from with all the main leaders of his community, like saying all these leaders, they agreed on doing activity with stingless bees. So basically that picture was for me to say, like, to understand that, hey, let's move forward with this. And we did a crowdfunding with the podcast I had 2019. And then 2019, I organized with the local university in Pará, a state, it's actually EFPA, so the local technical university, for the indigenous, the Kayapó, to come to EFPA, to the technical university, to learn some activities with meliponiculture. Of course, that was only possible because my father actually had the contacts with the local university, and that I had a bunch of people that would listen to my podcast, a bunch of people that helped sharing this crowdfunding, and the Kayapó, of course, that gave me hey, let's do that together. That we had the conversation literally on the sofa of my house. And yeah, so that's the very, very first activity of what happened to be Meli a few years on the road. Yeah, that's kind of how it started. And of course, this would take a while, because until the middle of 2020, I would still be working at the university. So I wasn't working full time with Meli. But then 2020, I was actually in person in January with the Kayapó, short before COVID. So we came back in January. February, I think, was COVID. COVID, the world got to know that COVID was a thing. So let's say I visited the Kayapó in the last chance within a few years. Yeah, so, and at the same time, we kind of started this WhatsApp group, and we brought a bunch of indigenous communities together, a bunch of students, the technical university students or local other university students that were excited about helping or learning or doing more activities on that regard. And also very important, communities that saw, other indigenous communities that saw, okay, you did that, we also want to do that here. My mom is a teacher, and she went to one indigenous community to the workshop, and the local indigenous community leader asked my mom, like, when my mom showed the pictures from the Kayapó, and the woman came, when's that going to be here as well? So that's kind of this all bringing together. So also all these networks from the indigenous communities, from the local communities within the Amazon region. So everything was very organic in the construction of Meli, especially in the start. Of course, it's still very much organic. That's kind of how we were built. And it's also something of our values, a part of our values. We don't want to, we are no top-down organization. So we are very bottom-up. Literally, these what kind of, and in this moment, I was very much kind of trying to define my life as well. I was finishing my contract with the university. And then I had 1 year to really reflect. So I stopped working at the university in the middle of 2020. And the end of 2020, I officially opened Meli in Germany. There was a bunch of questions. Should I open that in Germany? Should I go to Brazil? And a bunch of questions. And we defined this all together. Yeah, very much supported. One crucial partner was Jonas Guajajara. Jonas Guajajara was incredible leader. He was the leader in the Guajajara community who, like, is very much a bee he takes care of bees. We connected very well. And yeah, he's a huge leader, amazing leader. And he was very, very crucial in the start of Meli as well, of defining the goals, defining where we should be the focus. He's actually the president of Meli, the association in Brazil. Yeah, so that's kind of the things that happen in.
Yeah. So when you did the crowdfunding, what was the goal of the crowdfunding?
Was to do a meliponiculture workshop with the Kayapop people.
Okay. And how much money did you raise?
Really not much. I think the goal was 12,000 reais. That would be like 2,000 euros or less. And it was just for the communities to go to the local university. And the idea was that the university, like, we wanted to go to the community as well. We didn't raise funds enough to do the second, right? So we didn't manage to. We went, but paid by our own pockets, mostly. Yeah, but it was these 2 trips. So for the community to go to the university, and for us to visit the community as well. We didn't fully raised, but we still did the activities.
Yeah, well, I think that's also a goal of the fundraising, is to get your idea started. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you get all the money, but it's to get you started.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was the goal, and also it's important to have clear. Our goal was never to work only with bees. We did activities with bees, but having the bees much more as a metaphor of the work we do. And we have in our website, like, the reasons for that. So first of all, of course, it's indigenous wisdom, but the core idea is that the bees collect their own food, while at the same time they do regenerative services. So that's kind of how we have it in mind, in the sense of we do activities that are good for the community, that strengthen their food sovereignty. And then, but at the same time, we do activities that also have a positive impact to nature. These are the 2 perspectives that we have.
Yeah, because I was kind of like wondering, because it's Meli, and you talk to Meli Bees, and so you talk a lot about these bees. And I was watching the videos, and I hardly did see any bees. I just saw people with the seeds and planting new plants and collecting seeds. And I go like, okay, where are the bees? I was going, so I see no bees.
Yeah, no, we don't. So I have to say, we did connect, especially in the start. We connected a lot with beekeepers, with stingless beekeepers, so meliponicultures. We don't work with apis bees in the Americas, because they are not native to any part of the Americas. Maybe if we work in Africa or Asia, maybe at some point we will work with apis, but at this point we just only work with Meliponini. And actually, I wanted to have, in the start, we wanted to Meli the network much more. But due to pretty much names and like availability and so on, so we kind of put Meli Bees. Also to make clear, kind of to have this image that's not Meli a person, kind of it's Meli related to the bees, but we are in the end a network. So Meli Bees Network is our full name. And actually, I call Meli much more either just Meli or Meli Network, Rede Meli. That's actually how it all started. We would call that's our WhatsApp group, or like how we call ourselves would be Meli Network much more.
I hear you, because before I was thinking, okay, so why do you choose to work from Germany with the Meli Network while you do at the moment all the work in Brazil? But now you just mentioned, well, someday I might go to Africa or India or Asia and go like, oh, okay, so that's you. Your goal is not just Brazil. Your goal is further than that.
We are not only in Brazil, so we are actually since last year we are in Peru, Colombia, and Mexico as well. And this year, like since last year, we work more and more with them. Since a year, more or less, we have also another leader at Meli. We are three directors: me, Laura, and Evie. Evie is based in Brazil. I'm based in Germany, and Laura is Mexican. So we have these three perspectives. And Laura is the growth director. So basically, she helps us a lot with the growth of Meli within the other Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America. Yeah, so that's kind of, and that's because of her that we are growing so strongly within Mexico, Peru, and Colombia.
And I do like what you just mentioned about the reason why did you choose the bees as a metaphor. So the bees are taking care of their own food, and they're also bringing something back to nature, to their environment where they work and where they live. And I understand that because you are about biodiversity and agroforestry, that bees are an important part in the whole process. So I do understand. So you talk about collecting seeds with the indigenous people. You talk about agroforestry, how to build back the forest and plant the food that is originally from Brazil, so that is not sickening people over there, right? So in the videos you talk about that of Western disease that are now imported because of the food that you eat. And the importance of bees in this whole process is just so clear to me, right? So we are losing a lot of bee colonies due to the way that we work in the Western world today. So focus on bees and getting them back in communities, especially where you live, but also here in where we live now. You're in Germany, me in the Netherlands. Still here, also the same. Getting bees back is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about, because like when you think about bees, we also think about food sovereignty at the same time. Bees are responsible for pollination and when we think about food sovereignty, we have to think on health issues. So as I mentioned, like my family on my mother's side, so we are Omagua or Cambeba, as people say. So same thing, just two words, same community, and we've it's kind of like literally all my aunts have the diabetes. I have a cousin that's not that old at all, like not much, just maybe 1 or 2 decades older than me, less than 2 decades older than me. And he was having eye problems, like getting blind because of diabetes, So, and that's kind of, I do think, illustrated very well the impact of those communities, indigenous peoples that left the territory, first generation out, second generation out, growing outside the territory and facing all these diseases related to industrialized food that we don't have the basis for facing all that. And then there are a bunch of very, very common diseases to us, pretty much.
How do you deal with that in Germany?
I don't think it's relatively easier to find healthier food in Germany than in Brazil, I would say. I do think like in Brazil, even many like small things, like also popular, like the food for the people, like, the street food and so on, we would put a lot of sugar, like much sugar. And I do think in Germany, of course, you have a lot of industrialized food, but you are having more and more, this kind of groups that you can directly buy from the farmer. There are a lot of like small activities that are growing back here. So I do think it is of course challenging everywhere, but it's also very it is possible.
Yeah. Well, you live right now in I think, the most industrialized part of Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, so it is a very um, city kind of area. It's
Definitely. And like a few years ago when I started, because I started, I used to live here and then I lived in Baden-Württemberg for a while, and I'm back to North Rhine-Westphalia this year. And a few years ago, when I just had Meli as an idea podcast, and it was kind of the start, like still working at the university. And I had a conversation with one other person that used to work or works in supporting nonprofit organizations or supporting social-minded organizations. And he couldn't understand the connection with indigenous communities. He would literally say something like, "Oh, we just leave the communities there, and they find their food." So it's kind of as. And at the same time, I was in Duisburg. I was seeing this, the ore, the iron ore. As I mentioned, I come with my studies from my kind of, I have contact with the mining industry. And the iron ore that I saw in Duisburg was coming from Carajás, the region where I come from. And I know at least two indigenous communities, one that this ore passed exactly through their community, literally cuts the community in half. And being in this super steel making city and having people literally seeing like, okay, a place where it started to like it's the industry is so based in steel making, and they have their ore literally like coming from the supply chain, coming from literally cutting the indigenous communities, and themselves believe, and they have nothing to do with the indigenous peoples, that we should just do not leave them in peace. And it was very like, I couldn't even reply, I wasn't prepared at that point to reply anything to him. I was just like, because I was very conscious of this whole situation. And I was like, I couldn't say anything. And I was like, at the same time in my head, like, why, like, how can you believe that you have no connection with indigenous communities? How can you believe that you don't literally are killing hundreds of animals in the indigenous communities literally weekly, or daily? You're killing some some animal daily due to these trains that pass through the community, and you think that you have no influence on this community, like, so it's kind of a little bit tough, and that's kind of the difficulty that we have nowadays. Of our influence is very broad. At the same time, we are not aware of all the influences we have. And it's almost close to impossible to know all the communities that we influence. I mean, I'm not able to really have deep knowledge on the Congo wars, on the mining, and even, like, as I said, I used to work in the cobalt nickel project in the university in Australia. At the same time, so I know how the cobalt situation. I mean, I've read something, but I have no live in contact with the Congo reality. And of course, we all want good like, we want to have solar panels, we want to have good batteries for being more sustainable. At the same time, if we want to reflect on the mining industry that is impacting how it's impacting the global south, and times like, how can I be aware of all that? So it's kind of close to impossible to be aware of all that. And to be able to make decisions, we need to be aware of stuff like this. And the question is like, okay, how do I get that? And at the same time, okay, of course, this impact is very straightforward. That's happening. But there's another impact that happens also simply with the exchange of ideas. That's what you're doing right here, and I think. And I do think I do find it also very interesting to reflect and to remember that back in the 17th century, when indigenous peoples would start coming to Europe more and more, to France, and how the impact in back then led to something that was very base for the European democracy. That is like the French Revolution, and how the indigenous peoples were so much a big part of this influence that allowed this base of the European democracy to exist. So I do think it's very important for us to understand that exchange of ideas will mean also to reflect our values, but also to not, that doesn't mean that, oh my God, now that I have that I've been getting in contact with other values, I will have bad values. No, it's not like that. So we'll question and make something better out of this. And that's the case of the democratic values, the freedom values that we built in Europe in contact with the Native American ideas and so on. So now that we are continuing with more and more interaction across the world, I do think the world will continue building on ideas across the world and looking for and reflecting more and more on building this new perspective. So I don't think we need to be afraid. I see a lot of people right now in Germany being afraid of new ideas coming from other countries, and we can see in the reflection as last Sunday as election in Germany having the second largest votes to a party that is clearly very afraid of this interaction. And I don't think we need to be afraid. We need to actually foster that reflection and welcome and actually acknowledge that this reflection existed due to exchange with other parts of the world. So I do think the Europeans should be glad of democracy due to the Native American communities that helped the reflections.
Yes, I agree. I agree so much with you. I think if you want to learn more, as a listening to this conversation, want to learn more about this topic, a good book is what is it called?
The Dawn of Everything?
Yeah, correct. I was looking for the Dutch title, and now you have The Dawn of Everything by Greber.
David, there are two Davids.
Yes. Yes, there's two David. So it's a really interesting book, and also the other book what talks about Madagascar. It's a similar book from him from an earlier book, which explains how, first of all, like how democracies were seen in indigenous communities already, and how we adopted these ideas, and we thought they were like wild people, and in the end, they brought us civilization. As how you could look at it, and you just described it. So thank you for that, because I don't think a lot of people understand that the ideas that we got from democracy, but also a lot of revolutions, came from those indigenous people that we learned. And of course, I think we all know and understand, like you described, how in this case iron ore is coming from these regions and destroying these areas where these indigenous peoples are, if it's Africa or South America, it doesn't really matter. We are destroying so much at the southern hemisphere, and taking it from the northern hemisphere to enrich ourselves, right? So to have a better life and disregard the lives of others. So if you are like ignorant, like this friend you're talking to, and say, I have no connection with them, how can you not see the connection that we have with them? I think that's that's a really interesting perspective that you brought to this conversation, which I'm really glad for that you did that. Thank you.
And I mean, I do think that the Davids in the Dawn of Everything have very French and Canadian relationship, but we also have researchers like Afonso Arino de Melo Franco. He brings also the Brazilian connection with the French Revolution of Brazilian indigenous. So there are a bunch of researchers that have been shown and have been talking about this influence.
Yeah, I didn't hear about the research that you're mentioning now, because we just read The Dawn of Everything for the book podcast, and for us it was something that just occurred, and the insights that we got was, okay, so the book describes a lot of things here that we have never learned in history classes in our schools. So there's a lot of history that's lost because of how history is written, right? So it's not that it didn't happen, it's just how the books were written by, mostly white men, right? So
Definitely. Actually, I find it very interesting because so we have since years, literally, we have weekly meetings at Meli. So literally the communities coming together and research and talk about topics, presenting their communities to each other, present a project, or just having a topic to talk about. And this year we are structuring it a little bit better. So we have topics to reflect, and we put I think the maximum of points of questionnaires of what's going to be the next topic in our WhatsApp group. I think it's maximum, it's 10 or 12, I don't remember. And the topic that they selected, I wasn't expecting, because we had like food, agroforestry, we had a bunch of topics, and they selected history, indigenous history. And I found that so strong because, because many things. So I do think like this point of like who is writing the history, like who writes the history is like the winner, so to say. And we don't learn about indigenous history. At the same time, there is some histories that they orally know, they are aware. Like there's one community at the Guajajara people, one village that was literally destroyed, and they put a city there. So it's a little city there. And the communities are very aware. They even put the name of one of the villages, a new Tuari. So Tuari used to be where the city is. And there's this history on that. There's like history of like, oh, my grandpa flew from this village because there were so many people dying. And they were not dying like because of swords, like because of people killing them. They were dying due to diseases. There was one disease, I forgot the name of the disease. But well, there was one disease that the non-indigenous brought. Yeah, but there were like he even mentioned people wouldn't even be able to bury people anymore because there were so many people being killed. So they needed to just flew, and that was their biggest village back then. So, and nowadays people call, they even have their hymn there saying about the year when the non-indigenous visited and discovered this city and founded the city. So it's kind of very aggressive for the indigenous communities, and they have, at the same time, I don't know if the non-indigenous are aware of these stories, because they share literally orally in our Fridays meetings. But so, okay, we want to be in this in-between moment that we kind of started to build this content in a way that we also reach universities, that we also reach, the global audience, that, okay, we have content. At the same time, it's like, okay, what's indigenous history? Because we've been losing so much. Even on my own family, when I found like when I learned that much later that my family, my mother's side is on Magua, and I wasn't aware, like we like I Google about, I did some research, and actually one of the first writers on us is a German. So Humboldt wrote about us, about Omago being the strongest community in the Amazon River. And that's like, okay, I wasn't, like nowadays the Omago community is so weak in the sense of like we don't, of course, in the sense of, okay, the Chikuna have a lot of Chikuna people. They are very strong with their language and so on. The Omago, we are losing. Most of us don't speak the language anymore. Of course, there are the elders that do, but we've been losing the language and so on. So it's kind of, okay, why? So this wish of learning indigenous history, I do see is also a little bit of, okay, I want to strengthen this being aware of where we come from, and also in a way of respect on the other relative as well that has their own history as well. And it's kind of, I do find it quite interesting. I found it very powerful to see this as the main topic that they wanted to talk about next. I found it quite significant.
Yeah, I understand. I have a question. So you founded your network, Meli, and how are you funded? How do you live and survive in your work?
We are a nonprofit organization, so we are all the time looking for project support. So with grants, with donations. So please help us giving a donation. Most of the grants we received were always related to projects, and we are seeing actually that a lot of the activities we do, such as these Friday meetings or this network engagement, it's very difficult to receive grants for that, and so we are always working and looking for more and more support. So if you or anyone who is listening have the ability to support us, we want to raise more and more donations here in Germany, here in Europe, here in Holland, maybe as well. I don't know. We want to raise funds to work with more and more communities. We are also looking for ways to connect more and more these towards to exchange knowledge also between the communities more and more.
Right. Okay. One more question, because you have to go, is because I want to give you the opportunity to make some noise for it. You have a couple of events coming up, and if people are listening and they live in this area close to North Rhine-Westphalia, and the Netherlands is a small country, a lot of people live close to the border, and they can hop on to Germany. So what is going? Where can we find more about these events?
That's exactly what I was going to mention as well. So one of the ways we want to do more and more exchange between these two words, so to say, is to take the opportunity that we will have Erkapesuri here in Germany. So we are doing a couple of events, one in Bonn on the 13th of March. Then the 14th is going to be in Dortmund. And the 15th is going to be in Essen. So 3 events. Bonn and Dortmund are going to be open, so anyone can come. Just register online. Please come to these events. You will have a great conversation with Arcapesur. We have been present. I can also share one video, I can share both videos from the Guajajara agroforest workshop and the Surya Kewara workshop that were both incredibly valuable, very moving. I can share on the comments with you. You can watch both of them, and I'm sure you'll have very powerful interaction.
I will put the links to the events, to the websites, and to the videos in the show notes so you can watch it directly there. Anna, I want to thank you for giving us some insights about the communities in Brazil, about the work that you do, the communities that you have here, and the things that you do from Germany, but also not just in Brazil, but also going further and growing the community, and giving us also new ideas about why indigenous communities are really important to us and for us as Europeans, and what we can learn from them. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Good talk to you. And let's continue the conversation.